Welcome back, everyone, to our study in the book of Genesis. I'd like to begin with a short prayer from Psalm 86. Teach me thy way, O Lord, that I may walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. So let us go to our slides. We'll be looking at chapters 37 and 38, injustice in Israel's family. And we will start with Calvin and Hobbes. Pet Tiger wakes up and he says, "What a peculiar dream I had last night. I dreamed I was in a big fight with a ferocious weasel. What do you suppose it means?" "It means you're sleeping on the floor tonight, you nincompoop." Well, Genesis 37 is about dreams. Joseph, Jacob's favorite son, dreams dreams. For them, he is hated by his brothers, and he will be sold into slavery. Going right to the text. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, his father's wanderings in the land of Canaan, specifically at Hebron. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was tending the flock with his brothers, and Joseph brought an evil report, a bad report about them to their father, a negative, for sure, report. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. The translation of this expression is difficult, and so you see different versions here. A coat of many colors from the Septuagint, also an ornamented tunic, a long robe with sleeves, a very colored tunic, or a richly ornamented robe. What does this robe or tunic signify? Well, for one thing, for sure, it's a sign of favoritism. Joseph was Jacob's favorite. But it could also mean a sign of rulership or leadership. We have evidence from tombs in Egypt during the patriarchal period that Semitic chiefs, that is, leaders from the lineage of Shem, wore coats of many colors as insignia of rulership, of rule. And Jacob, in giving a coat like this to his son, marked him for the chieftainship of the tribes after his father's death. Well, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, and they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Hear now this dream that I have dreamed." And notice here the word "look" shows up repeatedly. He wants their attention. "Look, we were binding sheaves in the field, and look, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And look, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brother said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more. Literally, they added still to hate him. And the verb there added is Yosef, which is a play on the name Joseph. They hated him for his dreams and for his words, telling them his dreams. So Cass reminds us, Joseph commands his brothers to listen to his dreams of lordship over them, utterly oblivious to the alienating effect his speech and deed will have on them. So some questions here. Is Joseph acting like a spoiled brat? Is he arrogant, presumptuous? Is he worthy of leadership? And do the brothers fear his dreams might come true? Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream. Look, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, maybe even filled with rage against him. But his father kept the saying in mind. So Jacob rebukes Joseph in front of the brothers, maybe trying to teach him to be more careful in what he says. And while Jacob expresses skepticism at his son's cosmic starry dream, he nevertheless keeps the matter of the saying in mind. So his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and I've circled that area on the map. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And Joseph said to him, "Here am I." So Jacob sends Joseph, whom he loves, to his siblings who can't stand him, shepherding at Shechem, which was a place of bloody slaughter not so very long ago. So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. What do you think, 45 miles away? And the man found him wandering in the field. Now, maybe Shechem is decimated, is gone, and all that's left is a field. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan, another 15 miles. And they saw him from afar, even before he came near to them, and they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer," literally master of dreams. "So now come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that an evil beast has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit, this cistern here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So Reuben was well-intentioned, and it happened as Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. They took him and flung him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. No big deal. Who cares about Joseph? They lifted their eyes and looked, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, and their camels were bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Now, the gum here is a spice, a resin. It's not chewing gum, bubble gum. It's juice taken from bushes and shrubs and dried. And so it's a sweet smelling, aromatic spice. So we have gum when we have balm, which is also resin used in healing. You can think of the old spiritual. There is a balm in Gilead, from whence these traders came. And then myrrh or ladanum, again, another gum used for medicine, perfume, incense. It was one of the gifts that Jesus' parents received after his birth in Matthew 2. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" So Judah steps forward. "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers hearkened to him. And Midianite traders passed by, and I think it's the same group, same people as the Ishmaelites. And they, the brothers, I believe, drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Now, I understand that that was 3 years' wages for an average shepherd. And they took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone." And literally, it's "the boy is not. And I, where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Recognize, please. Identify, please. Is this your son's robe or not?" Notice, your son's robe. He recognized it and said, "It is the robe of my son. An evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is surely torn to pieces." And literally, the text reads, "Torn, torn is Joseph." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol, to the realm of the dead, to the grave, to my son mourning." And his father wept for him. And then this from Leon Cass. Jacob, like any parent who has sent his child on an errand from which he never returns, must be awash in guilt. Did he not know the enmity, the animosity that his sons had for Joseph? Jacob's outburst surely fits a mood not only of intense grief, but also of colossal guilt. No wonder he cannot be comforted. Jacob's response also forces the brothers to bear their guilt silently and inwardly, buried away, but within hailing distance of their own besmirched consciences. So just a consideration here about the danger of enmity and hatred in families. 1 John 3:15, "Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him." Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. This may be his bodyguard, palace guard, an official over the prison. And so a question, do Joseph's dreams really come from heaven? Do they really reflect the call of God? In Egypt, Joseph will interpret the dreams of high officials and Pharaoh himself. He will rise to high position. And in severe famine, he will provide food for Jacob, his father, and the family, the entire clan. The brothers will bow before him. Indeed, all the earth will come to Egypt and to Joseph for grain. So I think surely this story is another example of God's faithfulness in spite of human failure. The dream continues, yes, overcomes all sorts of obstacles: favoritism, jealousy, foolhardiness, hatred, malice, conspiracy, deception, cruelty, slavery, temptation that Joseph will face, slander, prison, neglect, he'll be forgotten, delay for years, and a severe shortage of food, just injustice. And then about Jacob, Brueggemann says, "We are all children of grief, if not that of death, then of empty failure, of dreams dreamed but unlived." Yet Joseph is alive, barely it seems, without hope, or so it seems. He is not free, but he also is not dead. As long as he is not dead, the unfree one need not give up on God, his promises, or his future. God has not abandoned the dream. And now we come to chapter 38, which some see as like, what's it doing there? It's like an interruption, story of Judah and Tamar. Tamar is, of course, Judah's daughter-in-law, and she teaches him some important lessons, I think. Why this story about Judah? Well, let me offer several suggestions. While Joseph is the main character in this final section of Genesis, these chapters deal with the family history of Jacob. And chapters 46 to 50 show that Joseph is by no means the only important character. In chapter 37, Judah has saved Joseph's life. In chapter 38, Judah is going to leave his murderous brothers, his hateful brothers, and he will act unjustly toward Tamar. But I believe he repents and he accepts and raises her sons, their sons. And I think that this is a lesson learned for Judah. He will act with courage, compassion, and wisdom for the sake of Benjamin and Jacob, and he will receive the birthright and blessing from his father in chapter 49. Not Reuben, not Simeon or Levi, those hotheads. So chapter 38, Judah leaves his hateful brothers and moves to the Canaanite city of Adullam. He marries the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua. She bears 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Judah secures a wife, Tamar, for his firstborn son, But that son is wicked in the eyes and the sight of the Lord, and the Lord puts him to death. So Judah instructs his second son, Onan, to marry Tamar and raise offspring for your brother. Onan realizes the child would not be his. So whenever he goes in to his brother's wife, he spills his semen on the ground. This refusal to give his brother offspring is wicked in the eyes of God, and the Lord punishes him with death. So a little explanation might help here. Judah ordered Onan to fulfill the custom, the duty, I believe, of levirate marriage, which requires a man to marry his brother's widow if she is childless and to give her children. Judah was eager that Tamar should have a son to continue the firstborn line of But Onan probably figured that a son born to Tamar would be privileged over all the other sons born to him, and he wouldn't get as much of the inheritance and importance in the family. So Judah, Judah only has one son left, and he tells his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah, my son, grows up." But Judah fears that he will die. Shelah also, like his brothers, he has no intention of letting Tamar marry his third son. And she lives as a widow in her father's house. Well, time goes by and Judah's wife dies. After a period of mourning, Judah goes to the town of Timnah for sheep shearing, a time of celebration and making mirth. But Shelah, Judah's son, is now a man, but still he's kept from Tamar. So she removes the garments of her widowhood. She covers her face with a veil and sits at Enaim, twin springs, maybe, or twin fountains on the road to Timnah. Judah comes by, thinks she is a cult prostitute, and propositions her. "What will you give me?" she asks. "I will send you a kid, a young goat from the flock." Well, she needs some security. And for a pledge, Judah gives her his seal or signet ring, a cord, the cord on which it hung, and his staff. These are all clear marks of identification. And the widow Tamar becomes pregnant by her father-in-law. Well, 3 months go by and Judah is told, "Your daughter-in-law has played the harlot. She is with child by harlotry." And without even checking investigating, Judah responds with haste and with a high hand. He says, "Bring her out and let her be burned." Well, Tamar is in mortal danger, but she sends word, "By the man to whom these things belong, I am with child." Judah recognizes his signet, his cord and staff. He confesses, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he does not have sexual relations with her again. So the time comes for her to give birth, and she has twins. When she is in labor, one puts out a hand, and the midwife takes it and ties a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore, his name was called Perez, which means breach or bursting forth, or he who breaks through. And according to the ESV Study Bible, something significant, it means something significant is going to happen through Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with a scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. And that means shining, brightness, dawning, rising. And again, we can only guess, perhaps that name means because of the shining brightness of the scarlet thread. Well, Perez and Zerah are among the descendants of Jacob, the sons of Judah who come to Egypt. And both appear in the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew 1, with Perez continuing the family line from Judah through King David to our Lord himself. Again, on levirate marriage, a man serves sacrificially as his brother's keeper. He marries the brother's widow who has no children, and the firstborn son of the new marriage becomes the legal heir of the dead brother, perpetuating the deceased's family line and keeping his property from being gobbled up by larger, wealthier families. The lever, the husband's brother, refuses to let his brother die without a trace. So the brother is not forgotten. His widow is protected, his family upheld, his lineage continues. The lever honors those in the family who have gone before and blesses those who are to come, holding everything together, preserving and protecting, respecting. He supports his sister-in-law's rightful claim to motherly fulfillment within marriage. And ideally, he upholds God's purposes for marriage in procreation, conjugal unity, and passing on the faith from one generation to the next. In accepting the duty of a lever, a man simultaneously shows reverence for his ancestors, respect for the meaning and purpose of marriage, and devotion to the future of his family and his people. That from Cass. So a question for us: is the spirit in the spirit of the lever and levirate marriage? Is there someone in your family in danger of being forgotten? How can this loved one's legacy be honored, memory preserved, or life cherished, and so blessing those to come, the next generation? Well, I have a couple of examples from Tim Russert's book, Wisdom of Our Fathers. Russert was the host of NBC TV's Meet the Press. And these are really remembrances, tributes from daughters and sons to their fathers. I want to read two. They're very, very brief. The first is called The Touch. It was a routine gesture during an ordinary car ride, but she still remembers it. As a young child, the daughter's writing, I sometimes stuttered. Once, when I was 6 and our family was traveling in the car, I was trying to tell my parents something and couldn't get the words out. Stuttering confused me, which caused me to stutter even more. Although this didn't happen very often, it was painful for my parents to witness. That day, while my dad was driving, he calmly reached into the back seat and pulled me closer to him. Then he put his arm around my shoulders and patted my right arm. I remember feeling a sense of immediate calm that allowed me to get the words out. This was written by Carrie Bostwick of Mount Vernon, Iowa, the daughter of Robert Bostwick. And then one more, the breakup. Time is not the only thing that heals, so do kind words. And this is again from a daughter. When one of my silly boyfriends and I broke up, and I thought I was heartbroken, my whole family tried to cheer me up. When everyone else had gone off to bed, my father turned back to me and said, "You know, I love you so much that I'd marry you if I could." That was the nicest thing anyone had ever said to me, and I was speechless. I don't think I even said good night. That from Jean Astorino, the daughter of Ross Astorino, an equipment operator. Blessings, brothers and sisters.